Peter Bobros here. Hey, I want to do a real quick video on Austin Ekeler and really talk about some of the places that he could land potentially on draft day, right? So I know we're going live on Thursday. Should be a lot of fun. Thumbnail is up. So please join us. Even just join us for a few minutes, right? Come say hello. We are going to be having a link so people can actually join our thread live if you wish. Have you on for a few minutes, see what you're thinking about the draft, where we could go. Love to get your thoughts and ideas on what we could do here in the draft specifically. But again, I want to talk about a little bit more about Austin Ekeler because I do think Austin Ekeler could potentially be trade bait on draft day. And I want to get into what that kind of looks like and what may or may not happen potentially on draft day. So let's get into it. All right, folks. So I want to start with a question that was brought up by Brandon Mitchell. He says, Jill, and it was interesting. I replied to it. And we read everything that's ever written in the comments. We like to see what people think. And again, we love engaging with you folks as much as possible. So, keep your questions coming. But Brandon Mitchell asked a really good question. Do y'all think we need to pay Austin Ekeler if we don't get Bijan Robinson? Part of my response was, hey, look, he's already paid, right? He's going to get $6.5 million, I believe, next year, no matter what. He's everything I've seen from Austin. He's like, all right, probably not going to get traded. I'm going to be playing with the Chargers next season. So, again, it's one of those things, right? Well, he's already been paid. He's going to be paid, and it is what it is. But I think moving forward, it's one of those things that we have to kind of discuss. All right, what's going to happen with Austin Ekeler? Now, there are some discussions that could potentially happen moving forward. And by the way, just before we go into this, Bijan Robinson most likely will not be at the Chargers at 21. I just don't see that happening. A lot of draft boards have him going in top 10 potentially. One of the things I did talk to Brandon Mitchell about this as well too. This is one of the comments on our videos from Sunday. But let's go into some interesting scenarios that I thought was pretty interesting regarding Austin Ekeler and some potential draft trades. Right. So one is that he could go to the Bengals, and for 2023 third round pick, 92nd overall. And again, these things can't happen on draft day, right? So it could even happen up to this week, right? This is one of the situations that, could be happening. Now, a lot of these teams also want to make some decisions on what they need, what they don't need. Now, I'm going to show both sides of this. I'm going to show sides of people that want to potentially trade or have been listed as potential candidates for Austin Ekeler, and then also reasons why they might not want him or why they shouldn't get him. It's probably a better way of saying it. But again, this kind of makes some sense to the Bengals, right? The third round pick, 92nd overall. I don't think that's really what the Chargers want. I'm pretty sure they want more draft capital than that. Now, we could go to Seattle, 21st pick to Seattle. Then we get the 37th pick and a 57th pick overall, which I think would make some sense, right? All right, so we trade back a little bit. We trade him away. We get another pick. That could happen as well, too. Not a bad thing. Bottom line, Austin Ekeler is a good running back. And again, he's getting older. We all know that when running backs get into their 30s or close to their 30s, he'll be starting at 28 this next season. You don't get long contracts. You're pretty much done. You're pretty much over with. Again, the argument is that Austin Ekeler is not really a running back. He's more like a hybrid Deebo Samuel type of guy, but it is interesting. Now, here's another one that I've seen a lot people talk about, Kansas City wanting him. Now, I have my apprehensions about this one specifically, and Aether brought up on our live stream yesterday that I think the way he worded it was, if Zay Flowers was on the board and the Chiefs wanted to trade down, would you let the Chiefs do a trade similar to this, right? Because what would probably happen is they'd want to trade that 21st pick. Then we'd get the 31st pick because they won the Super Bowl, then the 95th, and then the 122nd, right? And then we would trade away Austin Ekeler. That's a lot to give up. It's a lot of capital. But they would be trading up, and they'd be getting Austin Ekeler, and we would be getting a lot of additional picks. I think there's a lot to be said about that. Now, I've always been apprehensive to do trades like this. A trade like this would be great if they just want the 21st pick, okay? But the fact that they want Austin Ekeler and then these picks, could be tough, right? Because you're giving, a very key part of our offense to a division rival that's already very good. We all know how good they are. But think about Isaiah Pacheco and Austin Ekeler in the backfield. Are you kidding me with Patrick Mahomes? a lot of 2 running back sets. I think you're going to see, it could be really interesting to see. But so, you never really know how this plays out. But a lot of teams are similar rumors, right? The Bills, somewhat similar. We're getting a linebacker, maybe an edge rusher, a second pick and maybe a 5th pick, something of that nature. But a lot of teams are talking about, these are the different things. Now, the other one is the Eagles. I've seen a lot of people talk about the Eagles. We specifically talked about the Eagles on our live yesterday. But they would get the 7th round pick and the 219th in the 2024. I think that seems a little weak to me. I think what we discussed on our live stream was something like a 2nd and like a 5th, I believe is what it was, if I remember correctly. So I don't see us trading him away for that. So let's do this. Let's talk a little bit about the reasons not to trade Austin Ekeler, right? And again, there's a lot of teams that have said they want to get Austin Ekeler, right? I mean, I think there's probably 14, 15 teams that really have expressed interest. But the fact that he has not been dealt already after his, conversations, it's one of those things where you say, okay, well, maybe he's really not going to be traded, right? Maybe that's really not going to happen because, bottom line, it's going to be tough to get him, anywhere, after all these teams have already taken a look at him and said, okay, well, we don't really want him, right? So, again, a couple things. Again, the Eagles are a big part of this conversation, but let's go look at the first team. So the Niners, right now, there has been some interest talking about the Niners. Now the Niners, they got Christian McCaffrey. You guys all know that I was on the podcast just recently with Ted. He talks about the Niners. Look, I don't know that they really need to, right? They don't need any help in running back. They got plenty, right? They got McCaffrey. Come on. So, but why would they want him? They'd probably use him a little differently. They'd probably use him more of like a Deebo Samuel type of guy. And the good thing is, it would give them a little bit more, depth, and you could give some of these other guys breathers, right? Again, the running back position has become a very kind of a utility position, right? It's not just a running back. Yeah, you're there to block, you're there to run the ball, but also in certain situations, you're there to kind of just do some misdirect or some motion, things of that nature. Now, the second one is the Eagles. We've already talked about the Eagles. I don't know that the Eagles are really a good landing place for them. Again, they let Miles Sanders walk. That's kind of an interesting situation there. But again, they just paid Hurts a ton of money. I don't know that they want to pick up another large contract. And he's 28 years old, guys, right? At the end of the day, there's a lot going on, right? His massive extension that he just signed. I mean, highest paid quarterback in the league right now. Very interesting. So I don't know. I don't know that the Eagles make a lot of sense. But you never really know. Bengals. The Bengals have talked about, him coming over, Joe Mixon. Look, Joe Mixon's amazing. Why they shouldn't? They do need to sign Joe Burrow, right? They're in a similar situation as the Chargers, right? They got to sign Joe Burrow. The Eagles already did it. Cincinnati's pretty much up next, and the Chargers are going to get ready to sign Justin Herbert, right? And so, who knows, right? Do they really want to put some more money back there, right? And so there's some conversations that the Bengals may part ways with Mixon. I don't believe that, but again, Trayvon Williams and Chris Evans, they already have 2 other running backs. Again, the Chargers have 2 running backs, right? We got Joshua Kelly, and we also have Isaiah Spiller. We haven't even seen anything from him yet so far. So Bills, another landing spot. Again, I'm a big believer that the Bills are a pretty good landing place for them specifically. And I like the fact that, we won't be playing them nearly as much, right? Obviously, we don't want to see him twice a year, with the Raiders, Broncos, or the Chiefs, but you never really know, right? Again, the Bills, it sounds like they want a heavier style running back, and that's not really Austin Ekeler's game. Austin Ekeler's game is a little bit more of a, he's a scat back, right? He's more of a wide receiver. So I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of, I like the Bills idea, but it does make sense. And I know there was some general discussions around that. I did a video, I think about a month ago, when he first started talking about potentially being traded, but we'd get like a linebacker, an edge rusher, and then maybe a second, third pick, something of that nature. But again, I could see him being very good there. Be really interesting to see what happens. Now, the Jets is kind of interesting too. They do have quite a few picks. And then the whole Aaron Rodgers conversation is really interesting, right? So you never really know how that's going to play out. Again, they've had some problems at quarterback. Obviously, Zach Wilson hasn't really been a good, situation for them. Um, you know, again, Brees Hall has his injuries, right? So I can see this one making some sense, right? Especially because, I do think if they get Aaron Rodgers, you want a running back like an Austin Ekeler that could do a lot of things for someone like Aaron Rodgers, but again, they haven't landed Aaron Rodgers at this point, right? So it's really going to be interesting to see. And again, they do have, some other running backs in the stable as well, too. So I don't know. We'll see where that plays out. Cowboys, it's another one. They've been talking a lot about potentially wanting Ekeler. Ezekiel Elliott got cut, but again, Tony Pollard, he's been banged up. Are you seeing a theme here, guys? The theme is most teams have 2 to 3 running backs every year. Does not matter. They have running backs because guess what? They get hurt. They get hurt, especially when they're getting close to 30. This is why Austin Ekeler's value is diminishing, right? And I hope to God, I'm just going to say this right now. I hope to God we do not get Ezekiel Elliott. I see his name on these draft rumors or trade rumors all the time to the Chargers. I'm like, oh my God, please. I do not want Zeke here. I'm not a fan of the guy. I think his best years are behind him. And I just don't see him being there, right? So, but again, Dallas, they franchise tag Pollard. I just don't really know. Again, this is great. The Cowboys have no reason to hand another big contract to Ekeler because that's what he's going to want. He's going to want another $10 million, right? I mean, you're going to pay $20 million for running backs. Come on. When you could probably get a guy, in the 5th or 6th round, in this draft and be fine, and have another backup for Pollard, right? So anyways, the Lions make some sense, right? They did lose Jamal Williams due to free agency. Makes some sense there. DeAndre Swift has been okay. They do have some cap space. I think it makes some sense to have potentially go to the Lions. But again, what's it going to be? Who's going to do what, right? You do have to wonder what's going to happen there too. But, anything can happen, right? And these teams are desperate, right? And the Lions want to start winning, obviously. I think they have some interesting, their head coach is very fiery and passionate. You never know what he's going to end up doing. But they did get Montgomery. And I do think it's kind of a crowded backfield. So do you really need them? The Dolphins, again, do you really need them? Running back unit, they have Mostert and Wilson, 2-year deals. I mean, come on, Tyreek Hill, Waddle, they got all kinds of people. Now, again, would you want Ekeler? Ekeler is that good, right? He's that good of a guy. But again, the league does not like to sign people that late into their career. And that's the big part, right? Now, again, I could see potentially the Dolphins wanting him, but are we going to get what we want out of him on a trade? Jaguars, boy, 2 big losses. I was at the game last season in SoFi, and that was a tough one, boy, to just sit there and watch us just get shellacked. Of course, you got ETN there, I don't know. There's a lot of it, and they got Hasty, they got Johnson. I mean, look, there's a lot of people there that can also pick up 2 to 3 running backs. Every team has 2 to 3 running backs. Why would you want him? The Browns. This one makes a little more sense to me, and I'm going to tell you why. Chubb and Ekeler, I think, could make some sense. Chubb is more of a power back. Eckler's more of a scat back. I do like the idea of that, right? You can even use Chubb as maybe a lead blocker. But it's a lot of money. Chubb's getting paid a lot of money right now. So, I don't know that this one – I think this one makes a lot of sense in paper, but you just got to wonder if the Browns really care because they could go out and get another guy. They could go get Spears. They could go get some of these other guys they could get in the 2nd and 3rd round, and they'd be fine, right? And so, again, that's another part of the problem. Now, the Saints, you kind of got the same thing with Alvin Kamara. They're very similar type running backs. Ekeler and Kamara are pretty much the same type of people. Identical skill sets, right? I just don't know that makes a lot of sense. And again, New Orleans signed Williams to a 3-year, $12 million deal, which is huge. That's what, Jamal Williams is getting. I mean, and guys, he was, I believe, had one more touchdown than Ekeler or close to. So that's probably what, Eckler's going to want here in New Orleans. Now it's interesting because New Orleans, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to have a salary cap. They just find money somehow. So, anyways, we'll see what happens. And then they obviously got Derek Carr. I mean, I think that guy's a bit of a bust. Ravens kind of makes some sense with the Ravens as well, too. But you got to start thinking, well, okay, Lamar Jackson's still up in the air. You don't know what they're going to commit with him. And it would also, great example, this is perfect. The Ravens would send a poor message to the locker room if they acquire Ekeler then sign him to extension before having a resolution with Jackson. So it would look bad, right? It would make that locker room look bad. It would be bad for morale. And I think there's some interesting, kind of discussions there. So um look, I'm going to wrap up my general thoughts on this. I think Eckler probably will still be with the Chargers next season. I don't know that there's a team that's really out there that's going to pay what the Chargers want, right? Now Eckler is under contract. He doesn't have to go anywhere, and that's the truth, guys. Like, it's not a conversation where we need Eckler to do anything at all. I mean, hey, buddy, you're our employee. You're going to be here next year. And, I think everything I've read at this point, I think he's kind of coming to grips with that thought. Now, I will say this prediction as well, too. Obviously, draft day, slight chance something can happen there. Well, if teams evaluate their draft and say, man, still not happy with our running back room. All right, Eckler's available. Do we want him? Well, okay, we could go get him, and something could happen after the draft, or maybe there's some injuries in the preseason, right? Running back gets injured, yada yada. Practice, ACL, MCL, whatever happens. People can't play. Then those conversations start heating up as well going into the season. So again, net, I do believe Eckler will be back, but it's interesting to discuss some of these scenarios and what we can and cannot see with Austin Ekeler moving forward. So this is why the draft is so exciting for me, guys, right? It's awesome to see what could potentially happen. You love seeing trade up, trade down scenarios. Why are they doing this? What's their motivation? Why are they wanting to do this? So it's exciting to see. So as always, guys, I think it's an interesting topic of discussion. I wanted to get it out of the way because this is really the big chip that could be traded or moved away prior to draft day. And I wanted to review some of the other contenders that potentially might want to trade with us. So we'll see what happens, right? I mean, it's a pretty extensive list. All those people have expressed interest in Austin Ekeler, so things could happen and things might be happening behind the scenes right now. So as always, guys, Andrew Bobros. Oh, and by the way, again, one last thought. Again, we're going live on Thursday for the first round of the draft. Please be there. Love to see you guys. As always, Andrew Bolt Bros. See you in the next one.